know what is what.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
This is Hope for the Living Dead.
Watching this reminded me of like the ghost story that happened when I was a kid. Have I ever told you guys that? I think I might have told Twan.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you told me.
So we moved into a house in the city that I grew up in. We were originally living in an apartment, moved into this new house in a new town. And so I was really, really young, like super duper young. Like I was still in a crib at that point in time. But one of the first memories I have of this, I woke up one night and I saw someone standing over my crib, and I thought it was my dad. And then my mom started like screaming, like full blown screaming. And whatever it was, the shadow kind of like walked through the crib, like by where my feet were. My crib was in like in the corner of a room. So it walked like through the crib and like through the wall. And I don't remember anything else after that, but I just remember my mom like screaming. Years later, and I'm talking like years later, I don't remember how it came up, but I was talking to my mom about how I used to see like a shadow thing. And so the point of view from my mom from that night was that she woke up and she saw someone standing over my crib and she thought it was my dad. So she called out my dad's name and she reached over to her left-hand side and felt my dad. And so when she started screaming, the shadow walked through my crib. And so she ran over, she picked me up. My dad like hopped out of bed because he also saw something. And that was like the first experience I had with that like shadow. After that, I moved into my own room, which was down the hall from my mom's room. This was later on once I was like actually in the bed. And I remembered so many nights where the shadow would be like standing at my doorway. And as time progressed, it would like slowly get like a little closer, like every single night, until eventually I would feel it like move the bed and like sit on the bed. I was terrified. We lived in that house for maybe like 5 years or so. And I don't remember, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it because I just used to see it so many times. And I didn't really talk about it until I think I was like I was out of high school and I think I was already in like community college. And that was how I found out, like when I first mentioned the crib story, that was how my mom told me her side of the story. My mom also told me that sometimes when she would go out of her room to the bathroom was in the hallway between my room and her room, and she would see somebody standing at my doorway. And when she would turn on the light, the person would like disappear. And I remember we were having this conversation, and my grandma was sitting there, and my grandma was like, "I thought that was you guys in the hallway all the time," because my grandma, who also lived with us, she would also see somebody standing in the hallway. And then I found out that my grandma used to see a lot of shadow people when she was younger. She saw a lot of shadow people when she was pregnant with my mom. I think one of the stories that she told me that freaked me out the most was that one day she came home from work and she was walking to her bedroom and she saw somebody standing in the hallway and she needed to go there. So she turned on the light and the shadow person, of course, disappeared. So she walked into the hallway. And when she went into the hallway, she said that the shadow person was like crawling on the wall towards her bedroom. And she needed to go to her bedroom. So she just said that she slept with all the lights on that night. Because my grandpa was also working and he worked nights. So, she didn't have anyone there. So it was just her. But I remember that. And then seeing this movie, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, damn, this is fucking crazy. Because, there's a scene where there's somebody that crawls on a wall. And yeah, there's other parts of this, like when you see the shadow in the background, and just this movie like brought back like different feelings. So when I was watching it again, I'm like by myself, I'm like, fuck, this is kind of like, this is more creepy, especially now that I'm just like solo, you know what I mean? So yeah, good creepy times, good movie to have right in the middle of spooky season.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Cult of the Living Dead. We are in week 3 of our Halloween bonanza. Also got a cool update for you guys at the end. Turns out there's 5 Thursdays in October, so we're gonna actually have an extra week of the Halloween bonanza.
Let's
I'll
go.
get more details at the end of the episode on what we're gonna do. But don't worry, we are still ending it with Season of the Witch, but we need our number 4 will be a little different. So, as always, I am
Saving the
your
best for
host,
last. Sorry.
The Dale, followed by my 2 co-hosts, Mr. Saya
Yo,
and Twan.
What up?
Just a quick reminder for first-time listeners, we are a cult movie podcast. We cover cult classics, B movies, and horror. None of us are academically trained in film critique, but we all love movies. Just keep in mind these opinions are subjective. All right. For this week, we are covering Saya's favorite Halloween movie. He will be walking us through the 2018 critically acclaimed horror movie Hereditary. So Saya, take it away.
welcome. So,
Sorry.
Hereditary is directed and written by Ari Aster. It's his first ever feature-length directorial debut. He's also known for Midsummer and Beau is Afraid, but he really got his first attention from a short psychological thriller 2011 named The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. That movie's about a suburban family where the dad is trapped in an incestuous relationship with his abusive son. Sounds like a fucking wild ride. It got a lot of mixed reviews, but I kind of want to check it out because it's Ari Aster. And yeah, I mean, all of his movies are really, really crazy. This is a pretty star-studded cast. We got Toni Collette as Annie. She was in The Sixth Sense, Little Miss Sunshine, Knives Out, Krampus, ton more, and all the other actors have been in a ton of different movies, except for Millie Shapiro, who did Charlie. But all of these people have done some really amazing stuff. I'm just gonna kind of highlight some of the movies that I've seen them in. Millie Shapiro, who plays Charlie, actually came from Broadway, so she starred in the Broadway version of Matilda, and then most recently starred in a movie called Monkey Bars. Alex Wolff, who plays Peter, starred in Old, A Quiet Place Day One, Oppenheimer, Jumanji, The Next Level. Gabriel Byrne, who plays Dr. Steve, he was in The Usual Suspects, Stigmata, War of the Worlds TV show, and Ghost Ship. Ann Dowd, who plays Joan, has been in The Exorcist Believer, Handmaid's Tale. She's Aunt Lydia, and she also did an episode of The X-Files. Some other
Have you guys seen any of her other her HBO stuff? She's in this show called The Leftovers.
No.
She plays a very similar character. The show's pretty cool. It's about 145,000 people just disappear overnight, and it's like how the world like moves on from it because no one knows what happened to these people. So Ann Dowd is like starts like this cult where like nobody talks, and she's like this super creepy, crazy cult leader. She's very similar to Joan's character. She plays a lot of these of like creepy, like middle-aged like women who are going through some shit.
Yeah,
definitely worth a check out if the audience hasn't seen it.
I'll put that on my list too. That sounds really cool. Some other important people to note that worked on this movie is Colin Stetson. He did the music for this movie. He also did the music for A Color Out of Space, which is that movie starring Nick Cage. More recently, he actually did the music for Uzumaki Spiral into Horror. It's a new animated anime on Adult Swim, which is also on Max. Check that shit out. It's fucking great. Also did the music for The Menu, Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2022, which was on Netflix, and a ton more. He's been working in the field since 2007. And then the cinematographer is Paweł Pogorelski. I'm sorry, I butchered your fucking name. But you are Chef's Kiss amazing for the cinematography that you did. Also did it for Midsummer, Beau is Afraid, Blue Beetle, and Fresh, which came out on Hulu. So a lot of power that created this movie and went into doing all this movie. Um, yeah, I think we're all good. We're gonna
Especially Tony Collette, dude. She put on like an
Bro,
Oscar worthy performance in this movie.
really did,
yeah,
really did.
her range of emotion in this movie was fucking crazy.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
point it. There's a couple scenes in particular that I'm sure we'll go over that where I think she absolutely crushes it.
yeah. And I like that. For the most part, like all the actors, all the cast, has a lot of like history acting, and so everything is really well acted. I mean, even Charlie, who came from Broadway, like she still acts her ass off. Like I think it's all great. All right, so we're gonna do some first impressions. Twan, give me your history with this movie. First impression.
Dude, I love this movie. It was the second, I think it was the second A24 movie to come out, like have a major release. I think the first was The Witch, which I also love. But then yeah, this movie, I remember in the trailer, it made it seem like this movie was gonna be like kind of focused, or Charlie was gonna be like the main character in this movie. We find out that she's in it for maybe 25, 30 minutes, if that.
She
But
dies at the 33-minute mark. I wrote it
oh,
down.
33, there it is. So 33 minutes in, she's gone. But yeah, this movie's great. I've seen it a handful of times. Don't know the exact count. I think it's probably less than 10 because it's still newer. Um, yeah, I mean, the trailer got me. I saw it in the theaters. This was one of the movies that I did see in theaters. I had the pleasure of seeing in theaters because it was so fucking great. I just absolutely love this movie. It had been a few years since I had seen this. So it was nice to kind of watch it again for the pod, and just yeah, watching it again just solidified my love for it, because I'm sure we all found things that we hadn't seen previously, like little details in the movie, and that just it, I feel like if a movie has rewatchability and you're still finding new things about it, uh, you know, after each time you watch it, that just like speaks on how fucking good the movie is. And this is one of those movies. I Yeah, love this movie. Super excited. Was super excited to watch it.
Oh yeah. Dale.
So my history with this movie is I got introduced to it by my sister and my dad. I think they saw the trailer for it and they're like, they went to the theaters to watch it and they're like, it's so good, you gotta watch it. Like it's scary, but like it's so much more than that. He's like, the movie is just so good. He's like, hard to explain. So I was like, all right, I'll watch it. I think I finally watched it when it came on. I think it was like on HBO or something when it came to streaming. And I saw it with my partner, and like I remember we saw that movie, and then I think the next day we saw Midsummer. So I saw it around the same time period as I think both those movies came to HBO, and I was like,
Damn,
holy shit, yeah, I waited
What
a
a
bit.
back to back. That's a
for
that's
real, dude.
that's a good back to back.
It's cool too because they're both horror movies by Ari Aster, right? But they're
Mhm.
just so like drastically different in tone and in execution, but they're both also very good. Both have amazing fucking acting. But yeah, this movie I thought was incredible. I mean, I love the way it I was not expecting the what a twist with Charlie's character because it's very much set up to be like this is the main character of the movie. Who This is how you're gonna fall. This girl's really creepy and looks kind of weird. You're like, oh, okay. You just like focus. They focus in on her so much, and then it just takes a turn. And you're just like, oh shit. I really loved it. I love the portrayal of like emotions, like heartbreak and dealing with loss, and like the confusions of moving on from unmended relationships, especially Tony Collette with her mom. Super crazy. And then the way the movie just builds tension, because not like spooky stuff happens, but it's not like in your face spooky. It's just like creepy and uneasy. I had the surround sound going this time. And so like I really heard a lot of like the undertone sound effects and like how it kind of just like suffocates you. It makes you feel really uncomfortable. and then it just escalates and escalates, and then the final like 15, 20 minutes of this movie are fucking nuts. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Love
they
this
really
movie.
are. Yeah, I'm admittedly like a fucking slut for jump scares. I love it. But this movie came out when I think like Conjuring and all those movies had kind of more just recently come out, and it's such a change from those movies, and it was so refreshing to watch something that wasn't like it's like you said, it's creepy, but there's so much more to it than that. Like it's like it's a drama with horror aspects that are in it, and so it's great, and I think that's what moved it up to like my favorite movie because it's so much more, and I think it expands on the genre itself rather than just kind of pigeonholing it into just only spooky. Like that's all you get. There's no character development. There's so much character in this movie. Each character that we see has their own different shit that's going on, and it like gives it enough time to develop it. I mean, it's kind of a long movie. It's like 2 hours. But
It doesn't feel 2 hours though.
it doesn't, because I feel like once it starts, it just rolls along. Like it just keeps going, and it keeps getting worse. Um, but yeah, I love this movie. That's why I picked it. And if there's nothing else, I'm gonna take us on this fucking ride right now. You guys ready?
I just
Let's
wanna
do
I
it.
want the listeners to who have been joining us from the beginning, because Hereditary has been a movie that we've used as a comparison note for other movies and talking about how a genre has been like evolved and pushed forward in a way um that I would think we haven't seen what Hereditary did for horror and kind of like quote unquote elevated horror or whatever. And I think it's kind of interesting since we've been watching all spooky stuff this year and seeing how we went from like Texas Chainsaw, where there's not much character development, a lot of just death, to The Thing, and now to this. And like you see like the different phases of horror. And Hereditary is just chef's kiss. So I'm excited. Walk us through it.
All right. So we kick things off with an obituary of Ellen Taperley, aka Creepy Grandma, who passed away at her daughter Annie's house. The whole family gets a mention in this obituary. It's her late husband, Grandpa, her son-in-law, Dr. Stephen Graham, who I'm just going to refer to as Doc throughout the rest of this. Her two grandchildren, Peter and Charlie, and it also shares some info about the ceremony itself. Um, the camera then gives us this fucking chef's kiss shot of the treehouse and the workspace of the home. We see a ton of miniature, like miniature replicas in this room, and the camera slowly starts to zoom into a miniature of the home itself. And as it zooms in, we enter into the first actual acting scene of the movie. This shot, like, I remember being in the movie theater and watching this, and I was like, "Is this how it's starting?" Like, you can't tell that it's the movie at first until like the doc actually like walks in. And it's like, "Oh fuck, this is that we're actually really starting." It was great. Within this first scene, I think it really highlights the family dynamic. Kind of like immediately, Peter's in bed, Charlie's alone in the treehouse. Annie's already dressed alone in the car while her kids are like not even ready. And Doc is trying to like get everybody together. Everyone's kind of off doing their own separate thing. And I think the Doc is, as we see through the movie, kind of that one dude, that one force who's like trying to hold it together for the family. We then go to the
Feel bad
funeral.
for him.
Yeah, I know. We then go to the funeral, and it's a packed house. Annie's giving her eulogy, and she actually even says it's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today. I know my mom would be touched and suspicious to see this turnout. She then goes on to say that her mom is really secretive and private, with private rituals and friends and anxieties. On while this is all going on, we cut to Charlie looking at her grandma. We notice that grandma's wearing this like really weird looking necklace, like it's like a symbol. This symbol is going to be important throughout the whole movie. But as she's doing this, she notices that someone's staring at her, and she turns around and sees this creeper dude just creeping on her and smiling, this huge fucking really like nerving grin. In addition to that, we hear Charlie's click. It's just her thing that she does with her tongue. It's gonna haunt us throughout the whole movie. And she's also really bomb at drawing, uh, which means that she's not bomb at drawing. She also keeps that thing on her at all points in time. She pulls out a chocolate bar and starts chomping on it. And Doc asks if there's nuts in it, and she says no. So this is a good allergy foreshadowing. After the funeral, we head back home. They have a sick ass house. It's that doctor house and that miniature replica money type home. As soon as they
I
enter,
have two instances in this movie where I wrote down in today's episode of A House I Can Never Afford. It's this scene, and then when they're at the house party later, I'm like, Jesus Christ,
Bro.
where do they fucking live? These houses are so sick.
I know, and it seems like they're in the middle of like nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to take place in Utah.
Yeah, I did read that. Yeah, the Ari Aster really liked the landscape of Utah and the mountains and like how open and dark it could get, and it like gave off a eerie vibe.
Yeah. It definitely does. There's I think around their main home, it's like forest and just mountains, and so when it's dark, it's dark as
It's
shit.
fucking dark. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as they enter the house, Annie asks if she should be sadder. And then she immediately goes to process her feelings to work on her miniatures. And the first miniature that we see is a mini of her mom dying in hospice. We also learn that there's like a specific deadline that she's trying to work towards. Her kids are also processing in their own different way, right? Peter's just alone in his room, and Charlie's also alone in her room. She's hella sad because she was Graham's favorite. Charlie does tell her mom that Grandma wanted her to be a boy, and Annie says same. While this is going on, Annie looks up right behind Charlie's bed and sees one of the first four words written on a wall. It says Satony, Satony. Did you guys know what that was before? Like, had you had any reference of what these words were before?
So Tony, I assumed it was Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought they were maybe like demon names.
Yeah, so it's actually a word of necromancy. And it's one of the four words, and this specific word means to command the dead to come back. The only reason why I knew that was one of the four words is because there's this dude named Aleister Crowley who like practiced like dark magic,
Mr. Crowley.
and this is kind of like one of those things that kind of bleeds into it, which I also really like too that Ari Aster did, is that he took things that were like kind of real and like, you know, quote unquote real, and he blended them into this movie, right? Like this is like an actual word of necromancy that has been historically used. Also the demon that we see later on is like a historic demon. Like this is,
Put some respect on his name. He's the eighth king of hell, dog.
all right, my
One of
bad.
eight.
The eighth king of hell that is found in this movie.
He's some basic bitch like Pazuzu.
Yeah, he's no Pazuzu. He's a real. He has a title. And
He
I
does
really
have a
like
title.
that. I like that Ari Aster like used these kind of like real world things, these tangible things that we've heard, you know, maybe like on the outskirts of our cultures, and he blended them into this. I think that adds like a whole nother like layer upon it. And he pulls out a book called Notes on Spiritualism from this random ass box. And she sees a note left there from her mom, and it says, "Try not to despair. It'll all be worth it, and the sacrifices will pale next to the rewards." It's hella fucking cryptic. And at this point in time, you don't really know what the hell is going on. And so when Annie puts the book back into the box and she turns off the light, she sees this shadow standing in the corner of the room, and it looks like her mom. And we kind of freeze and linger on this for like a minute until Annie turns the light back on and the shadow is gone. We also see another really weird miniature of Annie trying to breastfeed a baby. We're assuming it's Charlie, and right next to the bed is her mom also offering a breast to try to breastfeed Charlie. I think that this whole portion really introduces us to the family and their whole dynamic. What do you guys think about this whole like intro portion?
I thought it was super cool, especially the intro where it kind of zooms into the miniature and then it's like the movie starts that way. I thought that was cool. I guess Ari Aster really wanted the audience to feel like the movie was taking place in a dollhouse, which I think is kind of interesting because I feel like, as we'll later figure out, all the members of the families are just things that the grandma played with in order to achieve her goal at the end, and none of them actually had any agency in their lives, because the grandma was secretly in charge of everything in a very fucked up kind of way. And I think I thought that was pretty cool, that filming technique. And then later reading like, oh yeah, that was intentional. He wanted them to feel like they're in a dollhouse. I was like, that's crazy. And it made me like think like, oh shit, because they were all kind of toys to the grandma. I don't think she actually really gave a fuck about her family in like in a real like positive way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Twan, what do you think of Annie's way of processing her feelings and making miniatures?
I mean, that's she's just one of those type of people that gets lost in her work, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have our own ways of processing feelings. This whole family's fucked up.
To
I
say the
mean,
least.
yeah, exactly. Which we're gonna find out as you know the podcast goes along. But I just want to like say Ari Aster, man, his the vision that he had for this movie and how it was executed, kind of to go back and speak on what you were saying earlier, Dale, about how like this movie kind of I don't want to say revolutionized, but it like almost changed the course of uh modern horror. Um I would take it back even just like a little step further and say James Wan really changed the game. Um
True.
with like his long drawn out scenes, and Ari Aster took that idea and just fucking expanded on it and was like, yeah, these long drawn out scenes are like they make you feel weird, but I'm gonna make you feel even more weird by making them even longer and having this like crazy sound design to like really make the audience feel some type of way. And I I I fucking love it. And the intro reminded me it was like James Wan mixed with like Wes Anderson, with like the the miniatures. It felt very Wes Anderson-y, and it just like had a clean look, you know? Like I don't know if you guys get that get what I'm saying, but like everything looked very clean and polished, you know? It
Mm-hmm.
just it
Yeah.
felt like a very clean movie. But yeah,
Did James Wan, correct me if I'm wrong, he did the Conjuring franchise or did he do Insidious?
he did both.
He
Both.
did both, right?
The
Yeah.
I
beginning of
think
both. Yeah.
I like that comparison. I think the difference between Wan and Ari Aster is that James Wan would hold on to those scenes, like the grandma scene, right?
Mhm.
And later on, we'll see with the Annie scene later on when she's in like the corner of the room, like he just holds there so the audience can see this fucked up shit that's happening. And I feel like what James Wan would do is he'd hold there and then jump at you.
Mm-hmm.
Where Ari Aster doesn't do that. He just
Yeah.
lets you be uncomfortable and then he moves on and you're just stuck with the knowledge that like, oh shit, there's like actually something that's right there this entire time.
Mhm.
We're not seeing that anymore. We're moving on to something else. And I like the way that he does that because it just leaves you with a feeling of unease and you don't get that release in the endorphins that James Wan gives you with the jump scare that he'll do. I think I think of like the Nun, they do that, and the Conjuring, they do that a lot. Where
Yeah.
they don't do that in this movie. Like there's no real jump scare moment at all through this whole movie. It's just constant
There's one
uneasiness.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Where
right.
is it the
when the
bird?
mom comes out of the corner.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's one. There's one like legit jump scare, and that's it. And it's done so well, and it's done so far into the movie that I feel like it was like the perfect moment because yeah, like you said, all the other were like forced to watch the shit go down, and yeah, that's why I feel like he took what James Wan was doing and like just expanded on it and made it even better.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think that's the hard thing about describing this movie because you can describe the drama and like the family dynamic really easily. I just think the scenes and the cinematography choices that he and the cinematographer did so fantastic. And it's kind of hard to describe because it's like we can tell you about how uncomfortable these scenes are, but like the shots are long shots. Like we stare for kind of a long time at grandma standing in a corner while all this
Yeah.
Yeah,
fucking
you're
creepy
just
music is going on and it's like
uneasy too. You're like,
what is going on? Like when is this gonna stop? and then the light turns on and it's over, and it's like, oh my god, like what?
Like
That,
Jesus Christ.
There,
Yeah.
and there's no audio cue to tell us that something's happening. Like you really have to be paying attention to it to
Yeah.
notice it. And it's very, you could very easily miss the grandma standing in the corner if you weren't paying attention,
Mhm.
and you would never know that that was there,
Yeah.
and you would miss out. But yeah, and another thing, this movie does such a fucking good job of character development. Like all the small pieces of dialogue in between, like when you were talking about how Annie was using making her miniatures as like a release. Well, they show the husband come in and he's almost like pestering her. Like, I don't know. I felt like he was almost like mocking her in a sense. Like, oh, like what are you doing now? Oh, and that deadline. Oh, do you have a title yet? Like, just picking at her. And then when Annie is trying to console Charlie, she's like terrible at it because she's like, Charlie, like, do you want to cry? You should probably cry. Why don't you cry? Like kind of pushing that on her. Like trying to evoke some kind of emotion out of her daughter. I just thought like these little conversations that were had added so much to the movie, even though they're so insignificant almost.
All right. So school the next day, Charlie's trying to create a toy out of a small gold bond bottle. The teacher stops her, and then a bird slams into the window. This is like a light kind of jump scare. We then go to Peter, who's sitting in class, staring at the chick who's sitting in front of him. I thought this scene was kind of important, and I think it plays a big piece, and it kind of, I think, draws attention to the story. But yeah, he's staring at the chick in front of him. Yeah, the teacher's talking about the story of Heracles.
What is he staring at?
He's staring at her butt.
Apple
Ooh,
bottom jeans,
boots
with the
the
fur.
What the fur?
Peter was looking at her.
At her. He hit the desk.
Oh, fucking dude. He looks so
That was-
sleep deprived this whole movie.
That was good. He really
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
He looks like he doesn't shower either.
Yeah. Especially towards the end. Like he just looks all
Good.
fucked up.
His hair's so oily.
Yeah.
He's just a mad stoner, dude.
Yeah, I guess.
Like,
I
mean,
think
a high
I
school
guess.
stoner, I guess.
I remember some of our stoner homies are, you could tell, like, damn dog, you still smell like weed. Did you not take a shower yesterday?
So the teacher's talking about the story of Heracles and that it was written to be unconditional. And so the main character never has any choice as he's going through the journey. And he asks, is that more or less tragic? I thought this one scene, and it's such a random, it's like a comedy scene, but a kid is like, yes. And then the teacher's like, why? And then the kid says, because. And that's something that I've done so many times before, and I just found that so funny. And so the teacher goes on to Peter and he's like, Peter, what do you think? And Peter has no fucking idea what's going on, because between looking at this chick's ass and texting his homie about getting an afternoon delight green bowl, he's just completely lost. But we hear off screen a student say that it's more tragic because the characters have no hope and they're just pawns in a machine. I thought that
Oh.
that was really, really cool. Because I think that kind of, I mean, that's telling us what we're kind of in for, right? Like this tragic story about these characters who have no real choice in what is going on.
Damn, that's crazy. Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool as fuck, man. I didn't catch that, but yeah.
Yeah. I thought I honestly I didn't
Damn.
catch that until this point when I was like rewatching it, because the previous times I think my focus has just been on the front of like, what is Peter doing? What is he looking at? Like, what's Peter's life like? That I kind of zone out like the additional like background noise, because I think when the student is saying that Peter's having this moment with the chick that he's staring at her butt, like she turns around, she makes eye contact with him, Peter stares back at her, and he's kind of like, fuck, like I fucked that up in front of this chick. And that was my like main focus. And it wasn't until I was
Yeah.
writing the script that I was like, wait a minute, what is this teacher saying? Wait, is this kind of like going on about this whole movie? Like I thought that was really, really cool. We cut to Charlie outside, and she's again chomping down on some chocolate.
The fuck is giving this girl so much chocolate?
Did she? I don't know where she's
Like
getting all
whole
this chocolate
candy
from.
bars, dude.
Yeah, not even
whole
like
bars.
pieces. She's just getting full bars of chocolate.
Got that
Well,
doctor money.
Yeah.
Had some head canon here. It was pretty cold during that time, right? It very well could have been like after Halloween.
That's
Mm,
true.
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So she takes some scissors out of her pocket because she just mobs around with some scissors, and she cuts off the dead pigeon's head, and she puts it in her pocket. And she turns around and looks behind her and sees a woman looking at her, smiling and like lightly waving. We then come back to the house, and Annie's working on another miniature, and it's a mini of a laptop on a website with the title Norms on Discerning Presumed Apparitions Methods of Communication. Annie notices that her mom's door is open to her room. And so when she walks in, she sees this really large triangle on the floor. She leaves really fast, and the doc locks up the room. Right after this, the doc gets a call from the cemetery, something about Ellen's grave. Annie walks away, and we hear something about desecrated. It's only been a week. When Annie asks what's going on, he lies to Annie because he doesn't want to, add to any type of stress that is going on within Annie. So, meanwhile, Annie goes to therapy, and this is where we find out.
Which is a dick move. Should definitely tell your wife, but I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. This is where we learn a lot about Annie and her mom and kind of what's going on. So we learn in this scene that her mom and her were estranged. Her mom had DID, which is when you have two or more personalities. It's often found in people and in victims of really severe abuse. So I think just hearing that, I think that you can tell that this has definitely been going on, probably by Annie's mom's mom, right? I think that this is like a whole like generational trauma kind of thing that's happened here.
Also, for people who don't know, isn't it dissociative identity disorder? Is it D&D stands for?
Thank you.
Also known as multiple personality disorder for the layman.
Thank you.
I googled it. I looked it up. I was like, "What the fuck does D&D DID mean?"
Yeah. Her dad died when she was young. He starved himself because he had psychotic depression. And her brother, who had schizophrenia, hung himself in his mom's bedroom when he was 16. He left a note saying that his mom was trying to put people inside of him. Whole lot of fucking trauma in this family. When her mom moved into Annie's house, Doc said that there should be some space. So when Peter was born, Ellen, who's grandma, didn't have any contact with him. It wasn't until Charlie was born that Annie gave her to her mom. And now Annie feels guilty about it. And now that her mom is gone, she feels like she can't get any support from her family because she doesn't want to burden them. And she feels like she ruined it all and she's to blame, or she is blamed. But we don't really get an explanation of what the blame is actually for. We go back to the house, and Peter's smoking some weed, and we see someone watching him. And the only reason why we know that is because we see like a puff of air come out from the shot, and we see Peter smoking in his room. The next morning, Charlie is making a toy with a dead pigeon head and clicking her tongue like she normally does. And then we see a blue aura, or maybe like a reflection coming from like a mirror or something like that. And Charlie kind of follows in, sees that it's like going outside. At the same time, Peter is asking his mom, Annie, to go to a party. And of course, like any teenager, he lies to his mom about going to the party. He doesn't say it's a party. He says it's a barbecue, and that they're not going to be drinking because they're not even old enough to be.
I love how his
drinks.
mom just calls him out on his bullshit.
Yeah, I know.
So you're gonna drink? No, we can't. We're taking your sister. Now you're definitely not drinking. He said,
Yeah.
"What do you mean, mom? I'm not gonna drink?" She's like, "This fucking kid, dude.
Yeah.
Be safe."
While
This
this
is
is
an
going
idiot.
on, Charlie takes her bird head out for a walk, and she sees a woman sitting next to a fire, kind of like in the bushes, I don't know, like 30, 40 yards ahead of her. And at that time, Annie runs out and grabs Charlie and calls her an
I
idiot.
think it's called Over on Yonder.
Over on Yonder. Annie runs out to grab Charlie and calls her an idiot for walking outside with no shoes, and tells her that she's going to go to a party with Peter, even if Charlie doesn't want to go. And so now Charlie's locked into this fucking party with Peter, even though Peter didn't want to take her and Charlie didn't want to go at all. This was kind of the way, I think this was Annie's way of making sure that Peter wasn't going to do anything stupid and like drink and drive. So yeah, they're heading out to the party. Peter's driving himself and Charlie. They pass by this pole, and the pole has the same symbol that we see on the necklace that Ellen was wearing at the funeral. Once they arrive to the party, it's um, house number 2 of a house that I'll never have.
So
Sick ass
nice.
fucking home.
Such a
Um,
contradiction too, because it's way more modern, whereas
Mhm.
the demon families is like this sick ass like old cabiny style house
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
woods, and this one is like this sick ass something you'd see like a millionaire have in Hollywood. So
Yeah.
crazy, but
Yeah.
they're both equally nice, just in very different ways.
Yeah. We see a girl chopping up a ton of nuts, like a ton of fucking
So
nuts.
many nuts, dude.
I've never made a chocolate walnut cake before. I don't know if that's how many nuts that you need, but like that was a ridiculous amount of nuts. So just
A lot
want
of
to
walnuts.
just got to say. Peter sees his crush and he starts flirting with her and he's like, "Yo, I got
Also, I've
some."
never been to a house party where someone's just making freshly baked goods
Yeah, I
like
know.
that. Just someone's in the kitchen whipping up a cake.
Rich people stuff, man.
I
I
know.
guess. I guess.
That's how the other half lives when they in their big houses.
But house parties have food.
He tells his crush that he has some good weed. And so he's gonna go smoke with her. And he asks Charlie to kind of hang out. And Charlie, of course, she's young. She says, "Nah, I don't want to be out here. I don't know anybody." Peter's trying to scramble to get his one-on-one time with this chick, and he notices that there's some chocolate cake. So he's like, "Hey, Charlie, just go grab some cake." And she's like, "No, I don't think I should." It's like, "Don't worry about it. Just go get some cake." And so she goes to get some cake. Peter walks into the room and realizes he's being bamboozled and sees 2 other people in the room with him. So now he has to share his weed with these 2 strangers and the chick that he really likes.
Fucked up.
I know Charlie's chomping down on some cake, but she realizes something's wrong. She starts wheezing. She's trying to drink some water. She's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, but something's happening. So she walks to the bedroom and she tells Peter, "Peter, I think my throat is getting bigger." So Peter grabs her, rushes out of the house, puts her in the car, and starts boosting down this dark, no light road. Cut to this scene, and it's really fucking intense because we see Charlie in the back choking. Her legs are like kicking because she can't fucking breathe. Peter's speeding. Charlie's rolling. Charlie rolls down the window and sticks her head out to get some air. Peter sees something in the middle of the road and swerves to avoid hitting it. I don't know why he does. I would have just ran it over. Then we hear a thump. Car stops in silence. Peter's heavy breathing. His eyes turn to look up at the rearview mirror, and he looks back and he starts to see something, but he just looks straight ahead. He puts the car into drive and slowly starts driving away. When he gets home, he parks in front of the house and he goes into his room and lays down, but he doesn't even close his eyes. The scene shifts from night to day, and as the day begins, we hear Annie screaming as she discovers Charlie's body. And he doesn't stop screaming until about 3 scenes later. We go through, we see a scene of Charlie's head on the floor, covered in ants. We see Annie screaming in the bedroom about how much pain she's in. And then she's screaming during the funeral services. And throughout this whole ordeal, Peter's just kind of standing there and listening to the things that are happening. And after all of this happens, we see a close up of the second of the 4 words. It says Zazas, Zazas. It's another summoning word, and it's a summoning word to summon something.
Oh, I thought I meant because Peter been smoking the Zaza.
Damn, that too. I think
That second scene with Annie where she's screaming and says she wants to die, that scene was, I think, some of the best acting in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Where like I was like, it's so uncomfortable. You could feel her pain. It's just like, holy shit. And you know what? It kind of sucks. We'll get to it later. We were talking about Steve, about the doc. Like he has to be strong for everybody. Well, like he also lost his daughter, but he never really gets a moment to like grieve because he has to take care of this like broken shell of a woman that he decided to marry.
Yeah.
Like, she's going through some fucking really crazy shit. Well, her also it's later we find out that she's also had histories of like mental issues and stuff, and he's kind of stuck with her through it. So like it seems like he's he never gets a moment. I just feel so bad for him. Like this whole time, like damn, he never gets to like grieve. At least we don't see him.
Yeah.
Just drinks whiskey.
Yeah.
I,
That's it.
I know why he stayed.
For
I've,
the
I've been
for the
saying.
box. For the
I've been
box or
saying.
what?
Yeah. Grippier the socks, the tighter the box.
True that.
Would you have swerved? I wouldn't have swerved.
Well, he
I've
was under the
I've
influence.
swerved before, like to not like hit a cat.
Brother. Someone's choking in my back seat. I gotta go.
Dog, someone's choking. I'm calling a fucking ambulance, bro. I'm not driving myself to the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah, that
The
was
True.
mistake
ambulance will
number one.
show up with an epinephrine pen. And then I also wrote bad parenting. Annie, you know your daughter's leaving. You know she's like kind of an idiot and like, no disrespect, but like you know she's a kid, whatever. Give her an epinephrine pen with her, and you're like, hey, make sure you have this on you at all times. Like my sister is allergic to bees. She always has her pen on her, or at least when she was leaving, my mom would make sure she had her pen with her, like in her purse.
Mhm.
Like these are things you have to do because you're not going to be there to watch her. So if whatever reason she fucks up and eats something that has nuts in it, obviously you've shown that you can't trust her to buy chocolate that doesn't have nuts in it, even though she knows she's allergic to nuts. So you send her with the pen, or you give it to your son. Like, hey, you're in charge of your sister. Here's your sister's pen. Put it in the glove box. Like, make sure she's like, if anything happens, you know what to do.
Nah,
But
bro.
no, didn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
They're bad. They're bad parents. I mean, just even at the funeral in the beginning, she says, does it have nuts? I don't have the epinephrine pen. So like they
Yeah.
didn't even have it with them at the fucking funeral as parents.
I like
So,
how
like,
Steve just sighs and he's like, yeah, I know you don't. I was like, damn, dude. Like, maybe you should fucking bring it then. You got that big ass house, buy a couple. Have one in each car, one on you on your keychain at all times.
they're
That's
rich
what I was-
folk. They don't have common sense.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, why don't you have one just kind of everywhere? Like
Or even in the meantime, she's having an allergic reaction. Hey, person who's hosting this house, you have some
Bro.
fucking Benadryl or something that I can give my sister real quick and somebody call an ambulance?
Yeah.
Anybody, the house was full of people. Like, yo, anybody here have an EpiPen? And like, chances are someone might.
I also think he was just, I mean, he was
But he was
faded.
high.
He was high. He didn't know what the fuck was going on. His first thought was, I had to get her help. And so he just leaves. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was all predetermined.
Bad parenting too, though. Like you teach your kid what to do in those situations.
yeah.
Call the
True.
fucking ambulance.
Yeah.
Oh well, the party's gonna get closed, but whatever, dude.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be a party pooper.
Well, it's better than having somebody die at your party.
She was meant to die.
Yeah, that is true, huh?
That
You
was-
think it was predetermined?
But yeah, I mean, the pole had the symbol.
Which is crazy though. So like there are forces at work that made all that happen.
Mm-hmm. It was going to happen one way or another.
And I think Annie was in on it the whole time.
Oh, we can get into that after. That's actually one of the things that I have written down as like a conversation point. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Interesting.
she's wearing the necklace with the symbol in the funeral in the very first scene.
I think I think she's in on it, but doesn't know she's in on it.
We'll,
If
we'll,
she
we'll,
is in on it.
we'll talk about it later because there's
Well-
other things. There's other
well,
things that are here.
Yeah, so we glanced over one part when I forgot when she comes home at some point in time, or she's home and she sees that the mom's door is open and she goes into the room and there's a symbol on the floor,
Triangle.
a triangle, yeah. And why the fuck didn't she tell the husband? Why why wasn't that brought up?
I think he found out because he locks the door.
He locked the door, but like as
They do
would have
keep secrets from each other though.
I feel like Ari Aster wouldn't. That's not something that he would have overlooked, especially when he's like gotten the details down to like the conversation that the teacher was having with the students.
I
I
mean,
think
we
it was
kind of
purposeful.
when we were when she goes to her AA for loss meeting. I don't know what those groups are called. I just call it AA for people that are dealing with loss.
Those are group therapy.
Yeah, group therapy.
Mhm.
I know they're supposed to be anonymous though, right? You're not supposed to like talk about people's shit.
Not group.
Not anonymous.
Oh no, you can just like
It's
air like,
group
dude,
it's
I had
group
this one
therapy.
person come in, her life is fucked, bro.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of group. You kind of you talk with other people, you hear other people's experiences, and for some people,
It's lethargic.
it's meant to help you kind of understand that other people are
Cathartic, would I
going
say?
through other
Not
stuff.
lethargic. Cathartic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like she says, like, oh, I'm gonna go watch a movie, and he's like, okay. But like he doesn't believe her, and he's like, this bitch is up to something. So we know that there's a history of distrust between the two of them. So it seems like they don't share with each other
hmm
in a very healthy way.
Yeah.
I think just like her mom when she says in the during the funeral, her mom had like a secret life, secret rituals, secret like anxieties. I think she also keeps that same like secret life, secret anxieties, secret rituals, and we'll definitely go into more of like was Annie involved? But yeah. So life after Charlie, Peter goes back to school and he's smoking a bowl with his homies and he starts coughing and he starts grabbing his chest and his throat and he starts just really having a bad trip and he says the exact same thing that Charlie said to him. I feel like my throat's getting bigger. And he starts crying and breaking down like right in front of everybody. When he goes home, Annie's hiding in her car and she waits for him to walk inside and then she turns on the car and immediately leaves and she goes to group therapy again but doesn't go inside. And this is when Annie meets this woman who we see in the first time that she was at group therapy. The woman introduces herself to Annie and she says, "My name is Joan." And she asks Annie, "Are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?" I just realized that right now that I wrote that.
And
They
my
share
name
some.
is Jonas.
Yeah, that's what I thought of.
Annie, are you okay? My name is Joan.
they
Oh yeah.
they share some details about each other's losses. We learn that Joan lost her son and her grandson. And you know, Joan gives Annie her address to visit if ever she needs some support. We cut back over and Peter's in bed, not sleeping, of course. He's staring at the treehouse. But like his mom, he's now haunted by the dead and he sees his sister. This is the first time he experiences this. We hear the signature tongue click and he turns and sees his sister sitting in a chair facing away from him. The next day, we get a close up of the mail slot, and there's a bunch of mail, and a pamphlet is slid in on the very top, and it's about an open seance put in by an unknown person. This person kind of walks away, and while that's happening, Annie's working on a miniature of Charlie's room. And just like in Charlie's room, there's a little scribble on the wall as well. The paint that's on her desk falls and it falls right onto Joan's address. And this causes Annie to look at it and be like, okay, I think it's time to go visit Joan. And as soon as Annie visits Joan, she looks down and notices this mat, this welcome mat that's right at Joan's door and kind of mentions like, hey, my mom used to make mats like this. And Joan's like, weird. And the conversation just completely like continues, right? Like Joan tries to disregard that like all notice. And he notices that she's has some like weird tea leaves as she's drinking her tea. And Joan kind of pushes the conversation forward as well. And Annie confesses that she used to sleepwalk. And one night she woke up and she was standing in Charlie and Peter's room when they were really small, covered head to toe in paint thinner, holding a box of matches. And the only reason why she woke herself up is because she struck the match. And since then, Peter has never really forgiven her.
That
We
is such
go,
an insane thing to tell a stranger, dude.
yeah, I
Like if
know.
I met somebody and it was like their first time at my house and that's their opening story, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Why did I give this person my address? I think number one, too,
My
why would you
number.
give your address? Like, give a number first, maybe like an email. You can reach out these ways. Don't show up at my house. That's a lot. And then sharing
That's
that's even
a lot.
worse. Yeah.
That's a lot to share.
Yeah, it's
That's quite the introduction.
yeah. There's some
Right.
real big trauma dumping.
Well, I
Pretty
mean
far.
that they met at a group therapy session, so I
It's
mean,
true.
if she
I
wasn't
guess
if,
that's
if she wasn't
true.
comfortable sharing with the group, there's a
That's
reason
true.
why she reached out to her.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just say this. I'm taking us back a little bit to when they were smoking. Those dudes don't burn, bro. I'm just saying it because I don't know if you guys noticed that how bad they fucked up the rotation.
Oh,
Oh,
dude,
yeah. Well,
Like
there's also
the
there's
dude
something.
smokes, passes it to his homie, and then he's about to hit it, and he's like, "Oh, let me get a hit of that." Yeah,
Yeah.
dog. After I hit it,
Yeah,
what?
dude. I was like, dudes get beat up for less, bro.
That's in a fucking circle, homie. This who's sparking all the greens too. Not even hitting a corner of it. It's lighting up the whole greens. Not caring about by anybody.
There's
Yeah.
I think we gotta wait till the end because I think that there's a piece in this as well that I think is kind of all connected. But yeah, you gotta remind me. I might forget. We go back to the house and it's dinner time. Annie's working on a miniature.
Her miniatures just get progressively insane.
Yeah, they just
Dude,
get way more unhinged,
what
but
the
also
fuck?
she's dealing with more crazy stuff, right? And I think this is her processing as
True.
well. It's a miniature of Charlie's death, complete with a mini head.
Crazy.
Doc walks in and he's like, "What the fuck, dude? Like, what are you doing? Come to dinner. Let's eat some dinner. You know, step away from this." Um, During dinner, we see Peter's chicken cutting skills, and I will say that this made me so frustrated. I'm sure Twan caught it as well, but like the way he cuts it is just like a mad. I can't even explain it. But
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, you're gonna go to great lengths to be like very detailed in everything, but like you couldn't get someone to teach them how to like hold a knife.
that might be his character. That maybe he was like Ari Aster was like, "Yo, Peter cuts chicken like a madman." That might have
That's
been
why
a thing.
nobody likes him.
Yeah.
I
This
mean, this is we'll talk about it, but I think Peter was kind of made to be a very like unlikable character in this movie.
yeah,
He's like the
yeah,
one character in this movie that I didn't really give a fuck about this like entire time.
yeah.
True.
Although
Uh,
on this watch, after like being like, oh, his mom tried to murder him, I can understand why he's such an asshole. Like, and other than the fact that he's a
Little
teenager,
shit. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, well, your mom did try to murder you, and like, that's a lot to try and get over.
yeah,
Your mom tried to burn you alive
yeah,
That's like the worst way to murder someone too.
with
yeah,
your sister and herself, like in some weird mass suicide.
yeah.
I don't know.
I think that this scene also just like the like when Annie's wailing after Charlie dies in the bedroom. I think that this scene really highlights the range of Tony Collette. Annie ends up going off on Peter for like not taking any responsibility of 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 Charlie's death. You know, it's like a really heavy scene between the family, and Peter ends up throwing blame back at Annie for forcing Charlie to go to the party, which just kind of continues shifting the blame from one person to another person. It's like nobody in the family will take any responsibility for anything that's going on.
Yeah.
And it actually ends with Annie just leaving dinner, and Doc is sitting there, you know, trying to keep the peace, but his family is legitimately coming apart. And I just thought that that was like, this is a really sad scene because it's, you know, that I think that of all the things that are happening, the family is just kind of breaking. Like it just, this is their spin into like their final kind of despair, like their death spin. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
next,
No, fucking Tony Coletti fucking acted the shit out of this scene. I
yeah,
don't know about you boys, but I felt like she was almost she had like a hissy fit, almost like a teenage uh fit during this scene. I don't know if that was intentional or if that's the direction she just decided to go in, but yeah, it was crazy.
it definitely starts off
It
like
was
that,
very
right?
good.
Yeah, because she doesn't immediately express her feelings. It comes out way more like passive aggressive,
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
and
sounds
it's
it's
Like
like she's like
sass.
her feelings are like, I want to blame you for killing your sister, but I can't blame you for killing your sister.
yeah,
So I'm
Mhm.
just gonna continue to dance around it and make it be known that I don't really like you because you
yeah,
killed your sister.
yep,
And instead of dealing with that fact, I'm just gonna be mad and like resent you for the rest of your life. I'm
yeah.
gonna do to you
Yeah.
what I did to my own mother.
Mhm.
And then he's just like, well, what about you, mom?
Yeah, you flipped it.
He
Yeah,
did flip
flipped it
it,
on
and
her.
then
flips it right
she
back.
was like, "What the fuck?"
yeah,
Because
That
that's
was
a compelling argument. I mean, like, what the fuck was she doing there?
yeah.
You know,
yeah. Like, why'd you
w-
force her?
exactly. Like, your kid's a stoner, not an alcoholic.
Yeah. So we go to the next day, and Annie spots Joan while Annie's leaving the art supply store, and Joan comes up. She's hella happy. She's fucking really pumped, just high energy. And Joan confesses to Annie that she met a medium and did a séance, and this whole thing happened, but it basically ends up with the conjuring of Joan's grandson. Annie's super hesitant about it, right? She's like, "What the fuck? Like, this is kind of crazy," but Annie ends up getting convinced to go back to Joan's pad to participate in this seance to kind of see,
Joan's like, "I'm gonna get this pussy."
yeah, to see to see what Joan is all about. And so we go back to Joan's house, and Joan's set in the mood with the candle. You know, she's putting on that Marvin Gaye. No, but Joan
Art
sets
LeBeau.
she
Art
sets up
LeBeau.
the candle and
The
almost
strap on just studs onto the fucking table.
God damn it. Uh,
oh fuck, taking this a step further. This is
Wait,
Hereditary on
did we
Pornhub.
not watch? Did we not watch the same movie?
Um, fuck. All right. So Joan's setting the mood and lights the candle, and almost immediately Annie senses something next to her. Like she like looks over to her right, and she's like, "What the fuck?" There's a cup on the table, and her and Joan both put their hands on it, and Joan calls out to her grandson and asks the grandson to move the cup, and almost immediately the cup starts moving, and Annie looks below the table and sees that there's nothing below the table, and the cup is still moving on its own. And Joan puts a chalkboard on the table, and the chalkboard starts to write out, "I love you, Grandma." Annie's freaking out. She's like, "I can't fucking do this anymore." She's walking away. And as she's walking away, Joan walks over and basically teaches her how to do the seance. And she emphasizes, make sure the whole family is in the house. That's the last thing that she says. So that's the last thing that's on our ears when this scene ends. And Annie's driving home, and in the car, she hears Charlie's click, and scene's over. Later that night, while Annie's in bed, she sees a
This
bunch of
seance scene was fucking crazy. Before
yeah,
we move on, like to another thing of Toni Collette's acting that I thought was so good is like how visibly like freaked out she is and like
yeah.
unnerved she is. Cause like it's like she could tell like this isn't right. Like this is weird. Like this doesn't feel like a good it's like a good spirit, but like this isn't a good vibe in the room.
Yeah.
And then this lady's giving her something in Latin and like giving and like while she's in this very vulnerable state, like she just like spewing all this like information into her where she's what I thought it was really good on Joan's part and on Annie's part because I think one thing that both Joan and the grandma do so well, which I think is also creepy, and I like the way Ari Aster does this, is that they just seem like regular, normal old people and like a normal middle-aged woman. Like they have these cute quilted welcome home mats. All the pictures of the grandma, she just looks like some old lady in a house that's like enjoying her afternoon. Like but in the back, but they're like these fucking satanic psycho fucking priestess of payment and shit. It's fucking insane.
Dude, that's so funny that you say that. And I'm gonna jump ahead really quick, but later on when she finds the pictures, I wrote like, bro, these Satanists just seem like they have the best time.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
they're
just, it's
just
like
like so happy all the time.
like
Like,
Satanists at the
is that the
potluck.
secret? Satan Payman's potluck.
I bet
Like,
they make
oh,
some
wow,
fucking banger
Joan
like
brought
mashed
her
potatoes.
green bean or casserole. Like, oh heck yeah, make sure you save me a plate.
Oh man.
Oh man, it's fucking crazy.
I have heard multiple times that Satanists are really nice people. So, you know, for all
Like
you
the actual people from
Yeah,
like
the
I
Church
think
of Satan,
the church
Mhm.
Satan of people.
not Church of
Yeah.
Payman.
Yeah,
not
not
Church of Payment.
actual black magic. I think those people are usually kind of insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little piece of trivia. During this scene, the seance scene, I guess Ari Aster really wanted to use practical effects as much as he could. They they put a magnet in the piece of chalk and then a really strong magnet underneath the table to write out the "I love you, Granny" part.
Nice.
That's so cool. I
That's
heard it.
dope.
They said it was really hard to get the magnet in the chalk
I
too,
would imagine.
because
Yeah.
chalk breaks apart really,
And
really
it's
Immediately
easily.
breaks.
small, so like you have to get a small enough magnet to fit and but still be strong enough to be magnetized
hmm
or heavy enough. I don't know how that works.
So later that night, while in bed, Annie sees ants crawling in her room and on the wall. Where are these fools going? She gets out of bed
It's hard to get rid of
and
ants.
and she sees that they're going into Peter's room. So she walks into Peter's room and sees ants crawling all over his face. Annie opens her mouth to scream, and as she's about to scream, we hear Peter say, "Mom." Annie wakes up from her sleepwalk. It's during this conversation where Annie confesses to Peter that she never wanted to be her mother, his mother. And she also
That was
confesses
fucked up.
that she tried multiple times to try to have a miscarriage because she didn't feel like a mother, but none of them took. But also, she's really happy that Peter's alive, but she just never felt like she wanted to be a mother. And at this time, Peter's like, "Why are you scared of me?" And she's like, "I'm not scared of you." And they're both crying and screaming. And then all of a sudden, they both catch on fire. And he wakes up, and this was a nightmare, which was like so relieving because I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, I legitimately thought that she set him on fire at that point in time. But yeah,
It was like
um,
a dream within a dream.
yeah, dream within a dream scenario. So that was
Waking life.
yeah, that was fucking crazy. Damn, Waking Life bringing us back. Um, this I think is where it really starts to start picking up. Right, we get The Conjuring Part 2. This is where Annie wakes up Peter and Doc because she's going to do something. When Annie wakes up Peter, I felt that Annie was really like frantic and like a really like paranoid state. And so you can kind of feel that throughout this whole scene, right? Like she's waking them up. She's like, "We got to go downstairs. You got to come check this out." And so they all rush downstairs. And this is where we see for the first time it's a home miniature. And I thought that this one was really cool because I think it kind of sums up like Hereditary itself. It looks like it's a tower and it's a bunch of homes stacked on each other. And each home is kind of like fucked up until it gets to the very top home. And that top home is like really nice. But I think it kind of like Hereditary, right? Like everything kind of bleeds into where you're at now. So I thought that that was like a really cool kind of like nod to the name in the movie itself without really like mentioning anything. It's just a visual.
Yeah.
So Annie tells the family that she's a medium and that
That was
she
such a jump too. Like
yeah
what?
yeah I know. She's did this seance and she wants them to like participate in there with her. And Peter and both Doc are like, "Nah, what the fuck?" But Annie convinces Peter to stay. Peter's like, "You know what?
Well,
I'm
because she's
down."
like, I'm a medium. I saw apparitions, but I ignored them. But now I'm not afraid of them. I'd be like, you saw what?
Yeah. But I think the only reason why Peter stood is because he's been seeing his sister. And so he's like, "You know what?
Oh, true.
You're right. I think I'm down to stay and I'll figure this out with you." But Doc, that we see later on, Doc is a psychologist, right? And so he's like, "Dude, this is a lot. Like I think you're in a manic episode. I don't want to stay." But Doc, of course, ends up staying because he loves his family. Like he's gonna do what he can to try to support. And so he's there and he starts the ceremony. And again, immediately the glass moves. Everyone's freaking out. Doc looks under the table. He's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And he gets out a notebook and says, "Hey, can you please write like you did before?" And of course, the notebook doesn't like move or anything like that. Peter starts freaking out. He's like, "What the fuck is going on? I really don't like this. This energy is really weird." He starts getting overstimmed. And then
He does get overstimmed.
a glass breaks behind him, and then the candle just erupts in this huge fucking like flame, and then it sizzles out. And then Annie begins to growl, and then she starts speaking in Charlie's voice, calling out for her family and freaking Peter the fuck out. Doc runs over into the kitchen. He comes back, turns on the lights, and splashes Annie's face with some water, essentially waking her up and like stopping the whole ceremony of what's happened. And we cut to this shot that shows us the last two words of the necromancy, and it's Liftoch Pandemonium, which means open chaos. I think the movie really starts to ramp up from here. Charlie's
Fuck yeah, it does.
Charlie's like
It's
Charlie's been
chaos.
sacrificed. Annie does a summoning ceremony. The family's unraveling. How were you guys during like this portion of the movie?
I thought it starts getting crazy. I think it's one thing I like that I thought was pretty funny is that when Joan gives Annie the paper, she's like, "What language is this?" And she's like, "I don't know. You just have to do it." And then when she starts speaking it, Steve, the doc looks at it. He's like, "What language is that? Like, what the fuck are you saying?"
Yeah.
The whole seance scene is fucking nuts. I guess I don't know if it's too early to broach this question. I guess we'll talk about it more in detail at the end. So they conjure the spirit, right? And the spirit kind of never leaves. And we never mentioned, but Charlie would see like that weird light, remember?
Like that pulse.
Yeah, like a pulsating light, like kind of, I guess a lot. And it never we later figure out later, I guess. It's like when the spirit's around. Um, do they conjure Charlie slash Payman, and is Charlie Payman?
I'll answer that at the end.
Because it seems like that's what happened.
I think that's yeah.
Definitely could be. I feel like all signs point to it.
Mhm.
So what are you saying that like
Because at
they were
first I'm like,
trying to summon Charlie, but instead summon the demon because
No.
Charlie is a demon?
yeah, they're one and the same.
I guess
And
yeah.
I didn't make that connection till this time I watched it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh, Joan tricked her into thinking she was gonna summon her daughter, but she really summoned Payman.
Mhm.
And then after looking at the clues, because we get clues throughout the movie, I was like, wait, so they did summon Charlie.
Mhm.
Like, wait, is Charlie Payman? Are they the same person? And I was like, oh. And then by the end of the movie, I feel like you get your definitive answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't put those two things together because I was just so busy being scared, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think same because I didn't like there's a couple of things that I just didn't catch, like some of the backstory, and I feel like the the way he does horror is so great that it's in your face, but there's like a lot of like background info kind of being dumped at you at like different points in time. And that's why I did enjoy it like this watch, even though I've seen it more than a handful of times. It was just something. It was a whole new way to watch this movie, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I like one thing that Peter said during the scene. He asked his mom and his dad, he's like, "You guys feel that? It feels like the air is flexing."
Mhm.
And I don't know. That I guess I never could think of words to describe how horror movies, like the sound that horror movies did.
Mhm.
Like I guess a good example is Paranormal Activity.
I was just gonna
Like
say that.
I
Yeah.
feel like that movie, the air flexes the whole fucking movie.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, light bulb, like that makes sense. Like I get what he's saying. I get what he's feeling.
Yeah.
And this whole scene also reminded me of kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre because Charlie got overstimulated and then she started yelling, or Peter was overstimulated, so he started freaking
I
out,
don't like
which
this,
made
Bob.
Charlie overstimulate, and
Yeah.
she started freaking out, and everyone was just yelling. And then classic, water to the face technique to get her to snap out of it.
Yeah.
Kind of seems like Steve has done that before to her, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's like,
right?
shit, she's
He-
having one of her episodes, gotta go get the water.
Well,
Damn.
I think Steve being like a trained psychologist, I think he knew how exactly to bring people out of like manic episodes.
In
And
my
like
head canon, Steve was that Tony Collette was one of his patients.
yeah. I think I
Ooh.
read
Because he's 22 years older than her in like real life. Like,
Yeah.
and he looks
Yeah.
significantly older than her.
yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
I think
I like that.
I think
that a lot.
I might have read somewhere that might actually have been the case, that he was, and that's why he stood with her throughout the whole movie.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
That makes sense. And he is like a professional. He'd be like, I know how to handle these like manic situations. He literally does it for a living.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, up until this point, like the movie's like, oh man, this is creepy, a lot of mystery. And now the mystery starts to get like unraveled, and it really escalates.
Yeah.
It really starts to kick it up a notch.
So we go back to school, and Peter notices that same blue glare that Charlie had seen. And during this time, he hears Charlie's click, giving him like a really good jump because he's sitting in class when this happens. Meanwhile, Annie gets a call from the art gallery while she's working on a miniature, and they're checking up on the deadline, and all this shit's fucking happened. So of course Annie hasn't really been focusing on the deadline, and she ends up just going King Kong on every single miniature that she has, except for Peter's headless body in his room. When Peter and the doc arrive back at home,
Cool little tidbit. The art dealer's Ari Aster.
really?
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
That's
him
cool.
on the phone.
I missed that.
Uncredited.
Nice.
That's cool. When Peter and Doc arrive back at home, Doc comments on like some type of weird smell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What's that smell?
The Doc ends up sleeping in the living room. He takes like 2 sleeping pills to go to sleep. And it's nighttime now. So Annie hears some like weird sounds coming from Charlie's room. She walks into Charlie's room and she sees a notebook filling itself full of pictures of Peter crying. And the pictures eventually evolve into Peter crying with his eyes crossed out. So Peter wakes up to a click again, but it's not Charlie. And he gets grabbed by something. Someone's trying to like pull his head off. And we hear a door slam, and we go back and we see the doc still sleeping because, of course, he's hella drug. He took 2 pills. And we see Annie in the room, and Annie's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" Peter's like, "You grabbed me." And Annie says, "No, I didn't." And so Annie, at this point in time, believes that the only way to save Peter is to get this notebook that has pictures of him crying and pretty much dead, throw it into the fireplace to catch it on fire. And so she runs over to the living room, throws the journal into the fireplace, and it starts to catch fire. But when she does that, it catches herself on fire too. So quick thinking, she pulls it out and stomps out the flame. And when she does that, the flame on herself also goes away. We cut out to the next day, and Annie goes to Joan's house to figure out what the fuck is going on. She's pounding on Joan's door, trying to get in there, but Joan isn't answering. And we cut to an inside of Joan's house, and we see that there's white robes draped all over the place. We see the symbol that Grandma was wearing. We see all of Charlie's toys in her room, and then we see a picture of Peter in the middle of a triangle that's carved onto a table. While at lunch, Peter hears a woman call out to him, and it's Joan. And she says, "I expel you, Zatany, Dagnany, a paragon, get out." While that's happening, Annie finds a book back at the house with strange writing and the same symbol that's on the necklace. Annie flips through a picture book, and she realizes that Joan and Ellie, her mom, were best friends. She decides to go into the attic, and when she opens the attic, she sees that there's flies everywhere, and there's some type of really weird smell going on. And when she walks up there and really gets into it, she sees a body on the floor, and the symbol that was on the necklace and everywhere else, it's also tagged on the wall. Meanwhile, Peter's tripping out at school. He's in class. He hears a click everywhere. He sees the light. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on. His arm all of a sudden just goes up in like a really weird, twisted way. And his face looks like it's slouching, almost like he's having a stroke. Like one side of his face is like just completely like non-moving. The other side is like up. It's really,
I don't know how they did that. It's really cool.
I don't know how
Yeah.
they did it either, but it's a really disturbing like look that he has. It's super dope.
He's pointing like King Payman was
In the book.
drawing in the book.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in the book, it talks about I guess basically the possession process, and then she flips the page and it says riches to the conqueror, and it's just like some dude standing in this pile of gold, which I imagine is the grandma because she's the one that started all of it, right? That was the whole reason.
Mhm.
Well, and we find out while she's flipping through the book, they call her Queen.
Queen
Lay.
Lay.
Yeah, Queen Lay. So I'm guessing she's supposed to be Payman's wife.
Yeah.
Like that's her role. Like that's why she was like at the leader of the group.
Mhm.
And then I think it's interesting how the possession process, it talks about how they possess, was it like the most mentally weak person or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why nothing ever happens to Doc, to Steve,
Yeah.
because he's like,
Oh.
he's the
The
only
most
one that has it
well-rounded.
together. He
Yeah.
never experiences anything paranormal
Yeah.
the
True.
entire time. The only time he does is when they do the seance, and
Mhm.
he's like kind of like, what the fuck? And like he's able to use, I don't know, he's able to kind of in his mind be like, this is all psychic break, other than like it being some supernatural shit. Because I
Right.
think it was crazy because I mean he kept it together. He was the only like sane one, but it didn't really help in the end.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if this had any significance. I don't know if you guys found out or anything, but after we're shown what like kind of went down in Joan's apartment, they show the apartment across the hall.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's apartment 202, and there's a camera facing the door, but like there's no other mention of it.
I assumed that Joan was in that room.
Mm, like they're
That
all in there.
yeah, like the whole crew is in
Mhm.
there and they're monitoring her. Because like they're like, yes, she's almost at the break.
Yeah, I didn't mention that Annie does find that book, and we learn about the ninth. What was it again, Dale?
He's one of the eight kings of. He doesn't say which number he is. He's just
Yeah.
one of the eight kings of hell.
One of the eight kings of hell. His name is Payman, and he likes to enter into the bodies of weak-minded individuals, and he prefers the body of a male. Um, and so that's what we find out about what this demon is or who this demon is. And so Peter basically got attacked by a necromancer, and he's
Do you know what? Did you translate what she tells him? I didn't look it up.
No, but I think Zatany is like the summoning spell to like summon a creature in, and I think the other words are like get out of the body. So I think that at this Joan was trying to expel Peter from his body and summon Payman to enter into Peter's body.
That's
Yeah.
right. And then that's when he's walking down the hall and he sees the light, right?
Yeah, he sees the light. He enters into his classroom. He starts hearing all these different clicks, and he turns to look at his like reflection, and then his arm goes up. His face starts slouching.
They like how his reflection smiling at him.
Yeah. The chick that he was originally trying to hit on is sitting kind of in front of him, and she looks back, and her face is just complete terror as we cut back to Peter, and Peter's face is just all fucked up. Like I said before, it looks like almost like he's having a stroke. Like one side of his face is like slouched down, the other side is like slouched upwards. He ends up slamming his face on the desk, I think like 3 or 4 times until he finally wakes up and he just starts screaming. The doc goes to pick him up, and Peter's passed out in the back. And as he's driving back home, this is the first and only time we see Doc actually break down and like start crying. Because this guy went through the fucking journey with his family. I mean, like we said before, he was keeping it together. He was the most like mentally strong individual, but at this point in time, he's struggling. So
Yeah, he's going through it.
when Doc gets back home, Annie's standing outside holding the picture book, and she's super excited to see Doc, but she realizes that Peter's in the backseat all fucked up. And so they get Peter and they put him into the house. And this is when Annie tells Doc that she thinks that her mom's corpse is in the attic. The doc goes to confirm, and he's like, of course she's in the attic. And so he goes up there and he confirms, yes, it is true that there's a body in the attic. Doc comes back downstairs, and Annie basically info dumps everything that she learned onto Doc, right? Like she learned that Joan was connected to her mom and this symbol, and she thinks that all of these things are connected, and that there's a journal, and that the journal filled itself in, and the only way to get rid of this is that the journal needs to be thrown into the fire. But if Annie throws it in the fire, she's going to catch on fire, so she doesn't want to do it. So she tries to convince Doc to do it. Doc is looking at her like, what the fuck is going on? He thinks that Annie is the one who dug up her mom's body and brought the body back to the house. And so he's kind of unsure at this point in time, but he follows Annie into the living room where the fireplace is. He does grab the notebook, and as he's about to walk over towards the fireplace to throw it in, he turns back and he's like, "No, I can't do this. Like, I'm not gonna feed into your delusions." And at that moment, Annie grabs the notebook out of his hands, throws it into the fire, and instead of Annie lighting up on fire, Doc lights up on fire. Annie's opened up her mouth to scream, and as she does that, a light washes over her, and she is now fully possessed. I think the cult really ramps up during this portion. Like I said before, full on necromancer attack on Peter and Annie. Annie's putting everything together. Walk me through your guys' thoughts. Did you expect the doc to light up on fire when you first saw this?
I didn't. I even after watching it, I was like, why did he catch on fire and not her? Like, why? What was the explanation for that?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, is it that the book was tied to it, a specific person? Like Annie thought, or Annie was wrong. The demon could have just set anyone on fire. It didn't really matter who it was. As long as they touched the book, they were susceptible to being set on fire. And Doc was the only obstacle left to get over for them to win.
Yeah, I think it was a choice by the demon. Because to get rid of the last male aside from, Peter. But he was I don't know. I felt like it was a choice. Because otherwise there's like no real explanation as to why it went from Annie to Steve or to Doc afterwards.
And I think Toni Collette does such a good job of being like manic and frantic when she's like putting everything together and like being like terrified because she's like, I fucked up. Like, I don't know what I brought into this household, what I conjured, but I conjured up something bad and it wants our son. And like, I don't know what to do. We got to burn this book to stop it. And like, she's just wrong in every front. She's a terrible medium.
Yeah, dude. I wrote, it's all in the approach. She put out crazy bitch energy when she should have been putting out cool, calm, and collected energy. And maybe Steve would have been a lot more receptive to the information, but she was just so wacky about it.
She should have just hopped in the car with Steve and just left.
Yeah.
Like, leave the house. Just go stay at a hotel or something.
But it wasn't the house that was haunted.
No, true. But like, I don't know. Don't be in the secluded area.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
I don't know if that would have helped though, because like as you see later on, like when it switches from night to day and like they're surrounded by the cult, who knows if the cult would have just stopped them from leaving?
True.
Would have just murdered Steve probably.
Yeah,
because they're rolling mad deep.
They were.
They are. Well, let's get to it.
Yeah. So like Dale mentioned, this is a really cool shot that happens. And it's really fast. And if you're not looking for it, you might miss it. But the scene changes from day to night. And as night happens, we see a ton of cultists standing around the house. And it's one of those really, really fast scenes. Like you have to look to see what's going on. And I'm actually glad that I caught it like naturally, because then I read it. I caught it this time, but I had not seen it prior. And I was like, wait a minute, are there people there? And I think
this was your first time seeing that?
That was my first time seeing the cultists around the house. Yeah.
I saw it the first time I watched and I was like, what the fuck? That's creepy as fuck. Why are they all naked?
I don't know if it was because when I saw it in theater, like the position that I was in, like again, some of these scenes are filmed where there's shadows like standing in places. And I think where I was sitting in the theater, I was probably sitting in an angle where I couldn't see the shadow really well. But this time on this TV, and it was just like hella dark in my house, I was like, "Oh fuck, there are people there. Oh fuck, there are a ton of people there.
People there.
Yeah,
did you not see them either, Twan?
Nah. So when I saw them, it was more like during the like actual like final 5 minutes when Peter's going crazy, and I was noticing them in the background of a lot of those scenes. This scene that I have pulled up of the house, and there's a gang of them just surrounding.
Surrounding the house, yeah.
That's in all the times that I've seen this movie, I've never noticed that. That's fucking crazy.
I remember maybe when I was watching it with my partner the first time, like she was like, "Is that a naked person?" And I was like, and we looked. I'm like, "Holy shit, there are people all over the house! Like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
there are
Damn.
so." And then we start noticing them in and out, and they're
Mhm.
all so fucking happy too. It's
Yeah.
so crazy them just delighting at this insane thing that's happening.
You know.
Like insane.
So Peter wakes up to a dark home and he notices Charlie's heat lamp is on in the treehouse. He calls out to his mom and dad and hears some type of like weird noise. And as he sits up in bed in the darkness behind him, we see Annie Spider-Man posing in the corner of his room. Peter-
This is such a creepy scene.
Super creepy. And honestly, like I heard that like in some movie theaters, the lighting wasn't that good, and so you weren't able to fully catch it. Like you can only catch like a light shadow depending on how bright or dim your TV is. You may also experience the same thing, but like Annie's there the whole fucking time, and it just makes it so creepy because it's another one of those scenes where you don't get the release of a jump scare. It's just there, it's in your face, and you just have to fucking live with it while it's happening. So Peter turns to look up at that corner, and as he's turning, Demon Annie crawls off on the wall into the hallway.
So silent.
Yeah. He Peter like gets up and he walks through the house and he walks downstairs to the living room and notices that everything's super duper fucked up in the house. And he sees something in the living room like on the floor, and he walks over and realizes it's the body of his burnt up dad looking all toasty. And again, behind him is Demon Annie, Spider-Man posing on the ceiling. He hears something over his shoulder, and so he turns and looks down a hallway, and he sees a naked man standing in the doorway, like just out of view, but enough to see that there's somebody standing there. And I don't know if you know this, but it's the same dude from the funeral scene.
The smiling
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that was
white ass teeth.
yeah, that was a crazy like come back around full thing.
Yeah.
He hears another sound over his other shoulder, and he just immediately starts on a mad dash for the attic. And as he's running, this is the scene that Twan was talking about earlier, where Tony Collette, Annie comes running out from a shadow, like complete darkness. She just immediately starts chasing him as he's running full speed. Peter ends up making it up into the attic and he pulls the ladder up, but he essentially traps himself in the attic. And his mom is slamming on the attic door, and we see outside Annie's actually like Spider-Man onto the wall, slamming her head onto the door to get into that.
Such a cool scene.
It's such
So
a
fucking
So
crazy.
unhinged, dude.
crazy fucking scene. And Peter's freaking out. He's yelling, "Please stop. I'm so sorry. Please, mom, mommy, please." And then there's silence. He sees a ton of candles and a spot where a body once was, and Peter's like freaking out. He's like, "You know what? No, I'm asleep. I got to be asleep." And so he starts slapping himself to try to wake up, and this is when he hears a crunch above him. Peter slowly looks up and he sees his mom floating in the air using a piece of string around her neck to saw on her own neck. And it slowly gets faster and faster. And this noise is just kind of just unnerving. Like it's like a crunch and like a squish that's going on at the same time. And Annie's just staring, not blinking down at him. Peter's eyes shift from looking up to down. And when he looks down, he notices 3 more naked people standing in front of him. One of them actually looks like his teacher. It's that man, the man with like the beard. We see
Oh
him.
yeah.
We saw him earlier. Peter
shit.
does what any other people would do: jump out the fucking window. Honestly, I'd take that fall. But as he jumps out the window, we hear Annie's body also hit the floor.
That was cool.
So Peter's all
Yeah.
fucked up on the floor.
And the head roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the head
The
roll.
double thump.
Mm-hmm. A faint blue light appears and it floats onto and eventually into Peter's back. And Peter wakes up. And as he wakes up, he sees his mom's headless body floating into Charlie's treehouse. So as he stands up, he makes the same clicking sound that Charlie used to make. And he walks towards the treehouse. As he's walking towards the treehouse, he sees a ton of naked people standing around watching the scene unfold. Peter enters into the treehouse and we see even more naked people, but this time they're on their hands and knees bent over in like a praying position. He sees the body of his mom and the body of his grandma in the exact same position. And he looks up to see a statue of Payman in the treehouse with his sister's head placed on top wearing a crown. We see a picture of Queen Lay, whose grandma, that's what Dale had mentioned before. And he just looks over at all of these people kind of crouched over. Joan is in this crowd. She rises and grabs the crown off of Charlie's head and places it onto Peter's. She says, Charlie, you're all right now. You're Payman. You're one of the 8 kings of hell. We've looked to the northwest and called you in. We corrected your first female body and now given you this healthy male host. We reject the Trinity and pray directly to you. Give us your knowledge, bring us honor, wealth, and good familiars. Bind men to our will as we have bound ourselves to you. Hail, Payman. The camera starts to zoom out as Charlie in Peter's body wears the crown, surrounded by people on their hands and knees, almost like a miniature in a tragic story. The end.
That was a crazy fucking ending, dude.
This ending is fucking wild. What did you guys think?
It's so awesome and refreshing because it becomes like a possession story, but the demon was never trying to hurt him. So like it just observing him in a very creepy way was kind of wild. Mm-hmm. I also wonder like if Annie possessed Annie would have gotten a hold of him, like what she was gonna do.
So I read a little bit about Payman. And I guess the whole like reason for that climax was to break Peter down mentally so much so that he was soulless. So they were never gonna hurt him because he was the vessel. They were just fucking with him mentally. And his last like moment of sanity was when he jumped out the window, and that's when he became soulless. He finally became weak. But everything leading up to it was specifically to get him to break mentally. So like, because Annie could have very easily killed him in his sleep, but she didn't. Yeah. She let him out so that he could see the dad burnt up. That's gonna fuck with him more. She scared him to run up the stairs into the attic. That was purposeful, so that he could see all the stuff up there. You know, it was all just to like scare him, essentially.
And her sawing her fucking head off was intense.
Right? Yeah. You know, when I first saw this movie, I thought it was knives that she had, and she was just stabbing her neck.
Damn.
Oh, instead of string or instead like of fishing wire or whatever?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
So kind of going back to like, do you think Annie knew what was going to happen? Do you guys think Annie knew what was happening this whole time?
I don't think she did. I don't think Annie was part of the group.
I think subconsciously she did, because I feel like she had another person in her, her sleepwalk version. So that
I think because I was having this conversation with my partner. I think that when she was met with all this trauma, she had been for years doing the traditional way, the healthy way, quote unquote, of trying to deal with all her shit by going to like therapy. There's like a fucking psychologist or psychiatrist for her husband and all this stuff. And when that doesn't work, she turns to what she was taught that she never believed in, which is like her mom's version of spirituality. And she goes to that. Like subconsciously, she's like, well, fuck it. I'm going to give this a try because it worked for my mom or whatever. Mm-hmm. And because she was desperate. And by doing so, like she unlocked like all that subconscious shit that she kind of put in a neat little box and like packed away. It all started coming out because she was losing it. So she got broken down, and her mom knew that she's just going to come to the shit that her mother taught her. And that's why they were successful in like taking her over and kind of using her to get to her son.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't think she was part of it. I think she was like a puppet and she didn't realize she was being played.
I agree. I think that she kind of mildly knew that she was a puppet and she was stuck in this and that it was like part of her blood that she was always going to go through this. I think that the first clue we get is the note from her mom in the book saying that like don't be scared, all of the sacrifices that we do are going to be worth it in the end. I think the only reason why I think that is because in her dream state she was trying to kill herself and Peter to save them. Like that was her way
Mm.
to save them, is that they all needed to die. Otherwise, they were going to unleash this demon in the world. And so I think subconsciously she was trying to like work through all of these things, but when she woke up, she couldn't rationalize that because that idea is so like far out there, right? Like she knows that her brother had schizophrenia. She knew her mom had DID, and so this idea of like, no, like I'm actually crazy. My mom isn't really trying to put a demon in me, but in reality, that was actually what was going on.
And her
And
brother
so,
didn't have schizophrenia. He legitimately was supposed to be the first vessel for payment.
exactly,
Yep.
yeah.
And he killed himself instead of let that happen.
Mhm.
hmm
And so I think that I think it had always been in their blood. I think that her mom basically like solidified them as being the family. And I think Annie knew and she wanted to get out, but she couldn't get out. And I just, yeah, I thought that was really cool. And it kind of ties it back to the Heracles story that like, this is just a tragedy. Like this was, they were all destined to die one way or another. Like they couldn't avoid it. It was going to happen. Whether or not there was an EpiPen at the party, I think Charlie was still going to get like beheaded. She was going to die in some way or another. I think that Doc was going to die some way or another. Like all of them were destined to do what they did in one way. I don't think it was like an avoidable situation.
Do you think Charlie was already possessed by payment?
That too. Yeah, I think that so there's a picture of Ellen feeding Charlie a bottle. And on the bottom of the bottle, you can only see this if you have like the book or if you look it up online, but on the bottom of the there's a zoomed in picture of it, and on the bottom of the bottle, there's some like weeds in there. And like historically, this weed is used for like summoning things. And
Hmm.
so what I think
Oh, is
happened
it like the shit that was in
that's in
Annie's
her
tea?
that's in Annie's tea. And going a step further, when Peter is smoking, he smokes and he starts choking and coughing, having this like really adverse reaction to something. And I think just kind of headcanon, I think that that same like weed
That
or
was in his
leaf
weed.
was in his bowl, which allowed him to be more susceptible to possession later on.
Interesting.
Hmm.
And so I think that once Annie gave up Charlie to her mom, I think her mom was able to put payment into Charlie's body. And so I think that when we meet Charlie from the very beginning, she's already payment and it just
So she's so
continues on.
weird.
Mm-hmm. So she's always been a demon who's just allergic to nuts.
Mm.
Weak
That-
ass king.
Weak ass demon. That's why he's the eighth.
I know, huh?
um,
But that is kind of crazy to think about. That she was Charlie was possessed the whole time.
yep. And that's why
Yeah,
I do think Charlie, even though Charlie's only in the movie, like visually for the first like 30 minutes, I think she's in the movie through the whole thing, man. She's always there, just in the background, just watching, waiting. Another random thing that I read, and it's off a Reddit post, thanks to Adhesiveness Massive 7, is that Peter's love interest name is Bridget Mulp. Mulp is Latin and it means siren. And so Bridget could be seen as a siren when she lures him away from the party so Charlie can eat that chocolate cake and basically start this whole thing of like sacrificing Charlie to get payment out of her body to eventually go into Peter's body. I thought
Yeah,
that was like a really
that's pretty
cool kind
cool.
of thing.
Yeah.
that is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess what I think is also really cool is that when Ari Aster like originally conceived this movie, he was just gonna write like a family drama. And then while writing it, he's like, hey, I can turn this into a horror movie. So that's
Hmm.
why it's like when we're talking at the beginning, like, oh, it's like a drama. Because originally it was a drama that he adapted into a horror movie, and his first horror movie was supposed to be Midsummer. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because all his
Yeah.
influences for this movie were not horror films, they're just other family drama movies.
Yep.
And that's why he does such a good job at that aspect. And then the what a twist, like building of the horror on top of that, I thought was such great writing and storytelling. It's really quite crazy. Oh, I have some more info on Payman because I looked him up too. But
Nice. Share it.
all right. Well, because I was waiting for Matt to get back. So I guess
Oh.
Payman commands over 200 spirits.
Uh-huh.
He's actually a real figure who's been taken from numerous grimoires. And his herald is a host of spirits. Oh, men with trumpets and well-sounding cymbals. He's the herald of spirits of men with trumpets and well-sounding cymbals. I don't know what men with trumpets means.
All right, let's get into our reviews. So this movie, as Dale said before, it's a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, but it's a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes certified.
Nice.
Oh, what's the popcorn meter on this one?
Oh, it's 71 popcorn meter.
Interesting.
Oh, audiences don't like it. I'm telling you, dude, it's a weird. This
is a fucking banger. I don't give a fuck what anyone says.
Hell yeah. All right, Dale, start us off.
All right. So Hereditary. I gave this movie an A. I would argue that this is probably out of the three horror movies that we saw is probably the best of the three, like just as a movie. It's just so good. It's not my favorite of the three, but it is probably the best. It's a very good movie. The acting, Toni Collette especially, she does a fucking killer job. She steals the show. She should have been nominated for an Oscar in this movie, but fucking horror movies don't get no respect from the Academy Awards because they're a bunch of, I don't know what the fuck their problem is. Bunch of old ass
Nerds.
people. But it's an excellent movie. If you want to see just like a really good drama with just like a sweater's worth of horror just tacked on top of it to keep you nice and cozy while you're going through the movie. It is great. I loved it. It's an A. I highly recommend it to everybody. It is scary. I will say that. I think it's scary as shit. I think movies that make you feel like uncomfortable and uneasy are like the best and worst kind of horror movies because sometimes I'd rather it just be like, oh, let's fucking killer chop this dude's head off because you just get through it. It's like whatever. But this is like it does such a good job of portraying real world problems and doing it in such a convincing way that it just makes you so uncomfortable. It's a great movie. After watching it, I guess my third time watching it, and I feel like I've seen it for the first time again because I noticed so many details that I didn't catch the first time, which was like really cool. I mean, Ari Aster just absolutely crushed it. It's a movie for me. Definite guarantee watch.
Nice.
Thank you, Twan.
Yeah, what a fucking wild ride of a movie this is. A lot can be said. Ari Aster for his first feature full length film, fucking awesome. Great introduction into the world of horror, or just even take away the horror element, and we're still left with a really good fucking movie. His use, I've said it before, but his use of like the long drawn out scenes is a beautiful thing. I love that shit ever since it was first brought to like big screens. Changed the game, and it just evokes this like feeling of like this unsettling, uneasy feeling. Like something's gonna happen, but you don't know if it's gonna happen or when it's gonna happen, and sometimes it doesn't even happen, which is it just adds a whole nother element to it. The horror isn't all in your face like most horror movies are like the last 2 weeks. It was nice. It was a nice change of pace. This movie delves into a lot of the emotional aspects of horror. The cinematography, awesome. From like the red hues that we see in Peter's eyes when he's looking out into the treehouse to like the blending of like the miniatures into like the actual scene itself. And like I said before, everything was just so crispy. Like it felt just like a like a really clean and polished movie. This type of horror is definitely different, from the last 2 weeks. But like I said, it was a nice change of pace. That being said, this movie is still gory. Uh, it's unsettling.
Brutal.
Yeah, it invokes like these crazy emotions throughout the 2 hour runtime. The sound design is fucking top notch. You hear everything that's happening, and it's like super ominous throughout. Yeah, this is just another one of those perfect fucking horror movies. And it's really a true, at least in my opinion, a true modern classic. I gave it an A+ again. I know the last 3 weeks have been A+, but damn, you boys have made these last few weeks some of the best when it comes to movie watching. Um, and also, I just want to add a little bit for us and for those that play Phasmophobia. So we have the ghost writing. It blows out candles and knocks over glasses. I'm gonna count the blue orb as orbs. So this ghost is either a mayor, a revenant, or a Thay.
Ooh.
Yeah, A+, banger.
Um, I picked this movie, so of course, got to hit it with a A+.
Nice.
Uh, I grew up watching horror. I grew up playing scary video games, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, saw all the classics of horror movies. So horror has been in my life, my whole life. Uh, I think that when this came out, this like changed my idea of like what a horror movie is. Even though I've seen other like psychological horror movies before, I think that this movie does a really great job of expanding on characters themselves and giving each character their own space to develop. I also think it does a really good job of showing characters processing different stages of grief. I mean, if you've ever lost anybody, you know like what those stages are, and you can kind of like see you can see that translated into all of these actors. Like each actor did an amazing fucking job of acting. Um, one cool thing I love about this movie too is that uh, it's not dark all the time. Like I like a horror movie where shit happens during the day. And a lot of shit happens during the day. Like there's some really weird, creepy stuff that's going on. Like the horror just continues and it doesn't stop. And I just really like that. And even though it's not like in your face horror, you just feel this overwhelming sense of dread throughout the whole time that you're watching it. And I think that that just kind of added to it for me. Ari Aster really came out swinging with his first feature length. With this being his first feature length movie, he came out really, really strong. And I think Midsummer was like a really great movie to follow up on that. And definitely recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. Check it out. It's kind of a long movie. It's like about 2 hours, but get ready to go down a journey into hell because that's basically what this is and where they go with this movie. It's really heavy, has some really intense topics of trauma and processing grief, and it's violent in some way, but I think it's such an amazing horror movie, and I'm excited to continue to see Ari Aster bring out more movies. Hopefully, he comes back and does some more, drama horror movies like this in the future. I'm sure he will, and I'm sure that other directors are gonna start doing this as well too, right? Because I mean, this is relatively new. This came out in 2018. We're not that far off from that. I think we're kind of seeing a shift in horror, just as we've seen in previous years, right? Like horror is a reflection of the time that we go through, and I think just as we're continuing to grow as people, I think the genre itself is going to grow within its field, and so I'm excited to see where we kind of go from here. And yeah, I love this movie so much. So thank you guys for letting me pick this movie for our spooky season. I'm really happy that I got to do this and to catch like all these different details that I had never caught before about this movie. This was a fun experience to do. So
Oh yeah.
Hereditary.
Fuck yeah.
Nice.
Well, thanks you, Matt, for taking us on this journey for our third movie for this Halloween bonanza. All right, guys. So we learned that there are actually going to be 5 Thursdays in October. So for our fourth movie and our Halloween Bonanza, we thought it'd be cool to look at what the rest of the world has to offer. So we are going to do a foreign spooky movie. So we got 3 each. Our choices are Dead Alive out of New Zealand, also known as Brain Dead, The Orphanage out of Spain, Incantation out of China, 28 Days Later out of the UK, Ju-on out of Japan, Terrified out of Spain, High Tension out of France, When Evil Lurks out of Spain, and Pulse. So let's spin the wheel. Let's see what we get. All right, let's spin the wheel. Let's go. All right, wheel time. Will it and deal it. Let's see what we get. Gonna be European or Asian?
Asian.
Oh, High Tension? No, it's gonna be when. Oh, it's gonna be fucking When Evil Lurks. When Evil Lurks out of España.
Nice.
When
This one-
Evil Lurks.
Damn,
Prepare,
I don't even know about this movie. What is this?
prepare for some pretty heavy scenes.
Oh, it looks like it's coming from written and directed by Demian Reugera, an international co-production of Argentina and the US.
Oh, it's Argentinian.
Oh, it's an Argentinian movie. All right. Thank you for joining us this week on another episode where Matt walked us through the 2018 horror. I'm going to call it a classic. It's a classic now, even
Instant.
though it's new. Instant
Modern
classic.
classic.
Hereditary. Excellent film. Got an A+ from Matt, A+ from Twan, an A from me. I think it's our highest graded movie up there with The Thing, so it's tied with The Thing. I have yet to give an A+ out yet. I don't know if I ever will. We'll see. Maybe if we cover Lord of the Rings.
Not even his favorite movie. Not even his favorite horror movie was an A+.
If you guys want to help support the pod, you can donate by clicking the donation link at the bottom of each episode. But if you can't donate, that's totally cool. We love making the pod. We do it for you guys. We like meeting with you guys every week to talk about movies. So make sure you tune in next week. We're going to be covering the 2023 Argentinian film When Evil Lurks. But until then, if you guys haven't had a chance to follow us on our socials, go ahead and do that. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X/Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. As always, I have been your host, The Dale, followed by my 2 co-hosts, Mr. Saya
Goodbye.
and Twan.
I don't have anything this week. Bye.
Bye.